NFC North, we have another wild card team, the Chicago Bears. Now, I know a lot of people think the fact that the Bears were the first overall pick, mind you, it was Carolina's pick, that they're just not going to be good last year. The Bears were 7-10 last year, like 7-10. So you're telling me they can't in the NFC? I don't think the NFC is as much of a pushover as people used to make it seem, but I think the reality is if they add on 2-3 wins and they have technically like a last place schedule, I don't know why they can't be the 7th seed in the NFC, especially with the additions that they made on offense.
Well, yeah, especially if look, and if what I'm hearing, I know I've been hearing what you guys have been saying. I've been seeing that Caleb's going crazy at camp. Look, if Caleb's the guy I think he is, which I'm very confident. I think Caleb is going to make that same look. It sounds crazy, but I really think he can have that same Joe Burrow impact. Because I said the same thing about Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow did the exact same thing. I truly view these guys as very similarly. Like Caleb Williams has so much talent, so much moxie being the key thing that I think he can just come in right away and kind of just really, really not dominate, but like be at a very, if not above average, close to elite level right from the second he hops in the league. And that's how I view it's going to be. This receiving core is already is so elite. The offensive line, there's questions, but I think there's more answers than questions, which is a good thing. And really the biggest question is the D line, right? But if Austin Booker can come in and have a really good rookie year, Javon can take that jump. We saw there was flashes last year, but it's far from refined. We got to see Javon Dexter get more refined, more of the little stuff consistently. But other than that, the defense, right? You definitely also look. I'll call it for what it is as well. You want to see Tremaine Edmonds play a lot better for the money that you're paying him, right? There was good weeks, there was really bad weeks. Even if we just flatline that, this Bears defense is going to be a relatively productive unit. And when you put all that together, how can we not have them as a potentially wild card team?
I think also my main concern would be the D line as well. But I do think, and I don't think it's going to be anything crazy, they could be a late free agency window player, like maybe a Calais Campbell. They did that last year with Yannick Ngakoue. So we'll see what they do there. But overall, they should be a wild card team at their
If they go
ceiling.
that route, Calais will be a lot better than Unique was too.
Oh, yeah.
I know Unique just call it for what it is. Unique had a terrible year last year. He's had good years. That was a terrible year. I think if it was Calais or someone like that, expect more.
Moving in to the Detroit Lions, we both have them as Super Bowl contenders. I think we watched that game with the 49ers last year, and we kind of knew that they probably should have won that game and they choked it away. So I think the Lions, who did improve, I would say by a lot. Like they really did great in free agency and really good in the draft. I do think that the Lions are basically locks to be Super Bowl contenders this year.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. It's like this is a team I'm not going to spend much time on because they were literally boneheaded decisions and snaps away from they're going to the Super Bowl and then also facing a team that they had already beaten early on in the season. There's a very good chance the Lions could have been Super Bowl champions last year, and everyone knows that. There's no doubting it. It's just a fact. And you have so many guys in this roster that produce. I'd say you have a guy who's tied for the most underrated player in the whole league. I'll say the two guys. Kevin Dotson, obviously on the Rams, but then on the Lions we have Ali McNeil. I think those are the two most underrated players in the entire league. And if Marcus Davenport can come over and be the guy that he was inconsistently on the Saints, consistently on the Lions, this D line is a ferocious unit. And if the D-backs, if Terran Arnold's who we think he is, and Carlton Davis can just even be the same player he was last year. The D-back room made a massive step forward. And if Carlton Davis can go back to vintage Carlton Davis from a couple years ago, this Lions defense is locked down with an offense that shows that they can put up points with anybody. How could the Lions not be Super Bowl contenders?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they did in the draft with Terran Arnold getting the best corner in the draft was an amazing move. And the only thing that concerns me a little bit is you hope Jameson Williams can take that step to be your wide receiver too. And I know technically Laporta will be kind of your wide receiver too. But at the end of the day, like, okay, Williams goes down. Khalif Raymond's your wide receiver too. It gets pretty thin. I know they traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones. That is the one thing I would have wished that they went out and got. I can't remember if he signed with a team. I don't think so. But like to me, this is a team that go out and get Jarvis Landry for pretty cheap. Like, go sign him. Just get a veteran body in the room. So that would be my only concern with the Lions. But overall, I think they should be pretty solid Super Bowl contenders. We have another.
Jarvis is super interesting.
Jarvis would be. I mean, like, you just need a veteran body. Like, get
You
him
see
in
someone who
there.
knows where to sit. Like Jarvis doesn't have what he used to have, but Jarvis will know where to sit and he'll catch it. You know what I mean? Like you see someone like that in this offense.
Moving into another Super Bowl contender, unfortunately, is the Green Bay Packers. So surprising last year in terms of what they were able to accomplish. I mean, I think people thought they would be okay, but with the way that they played at the end of the season, how hot they got, I don't see why building on basically the same team, adding in the draft, adding Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, why they can't be Super Bowl contenders this year.
And yeah, and I think what's scary about it for not only the NFC North, you know, as you for you, the NFC North is just gonna be a bloodbath. But what's so scary about it for the rest of the league is that Jordan Love is elevating them so much. Where I'd say like we're at a point where the Packers roster is probably the weakest roster in terms of just total roster strength that we have as a Super Bowl contender. But that's why it's scary is because there's still so much to build on for this team. And they've already showed that they can be Super Bowl contenders. Like there's a fair amount of holes you could poke at this roster. I mean, there's really not. Matter of fact, there's not one unit on this roster that's an elite unit in the league. 100%. There's just not. There's just a bunch of good players that you can pick out and ascending young stars. It's kind of a combination of both. Not that I don't think some of these guys can be elite in a couple years, especially Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed can make a huge jump this year, kind of put himself in that elite, especially elite slot range. I think he could do that this year 100%. But it's more in terms of they're young guys that still have to prove some stuff at the peak, and then outside of that, there's a few stars here and there like Jair, but there's not a ton of. You get what I'm saying in terms of pure overall roster strength. The Packers have a lot they can build on, and they're still Super Bowl contenders. That's a scary sight for the NFC.
No, 100%. I think the Packers may have yet again found their quarterback. Moving in to the Minnesota Vikings. We are different at the start of this, but I think I'm going to side with you. We're going to go Minnesota Vikings as a 500 team. They're a team last year that I believe they were, what were they, 7-10 last year?
I do believe.
So a team that was 7-10 that was playing with Josh Dobbs, who was their BYU quarterback, Jaron Hall. They were missing Jay Jettas for a majority of the season. They didn't have a run game. They improved on defense. I am still a little bit concerned about their corner room outside of Sean Murphy Bunting. They do add Dallas Turner, who is a very high potential guy. I think he's super athletic. I just want to see how he pans out. With that being said, they add JJ McCarthy, who I think is probably going to play sooner than people think. Like, I was on the train of like, oh, they're going to sit him for a whole year. They just got Darnold as a bridge guy. But with the way they're talking, it sounds like he's going to play. And I think the record will probably be a little bit worse if he plays, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think no one's really expecting him to do anything this year. But with that being said, the Vikings have probably the best situation for a rookie outside of the Bears. And I mean, you could make the argument that it's better than the Bears.
No, yeah, and you basically covered everything. What I'll really just add to it is because, like, that was gonna be my spiel. Is that you're spot on? Like, I think especially like the way, yeah, like you said, the way you hear about them talking about him, the way that they've talked about the plan coming together. I think we will probably see JJ out there sooner than expected, and that's actually why I pivoted from being just a mid team to the 500 range because, like I said earlier about, I'm blanking on who I said it about, but it was very similar. Where you're going to get what I'm just remind me who it was if you remember. But JJ is actually also very similar to that Justin Herbert explanation I gave, where it's like, I don't expect him to come out and really hit the ceiling, kind of getting close to that ceiling that we think he has in his rookie year. But if he does, and he comes out and really surprises and is really hitting those tight window throws and is really lasering that thing across the field really, really early on, which is what we don't expect, but it's possible. If that's the case with this receiving core, I can see them getting close to around the 500 range, and all of a sudden we're like, man, just had the NFC North. Like, all of a sudden the Vikings are right there too. Like, that's the ceiling for the team this year. I don't really look at it any other way. Like, yeah, there's questions on the defense for sure, but there's a lot of questions on the defense. But I look at it in terms of like, if this team is elevated, it's going to be off of JJ having a fantastic rookie year, and that's kind of just how I'm looking at the ceiling.